Geiger #1 follows the glowing man as he meets out brutal, violent justice and wanders the radioactive wastelands of America after the unknown war. And we've got the review right here. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Geiger #1 from Image Comics and Ghost Machine Comics. But before we get started, please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that bell for notification. Your attention is greatly appreciated, and make sure you stay tuned to the end for the final score. Let's start with the credits. Geiger #1 is written by Jeff Johns with art by Gary Frank, colors by Brad Anderson, letters by Rob Lay, and the main cover, cover A, is drawn by Gary Frank with colors by Brad Anderson. Before we dig into the meat of the issue, let's give a little context and background on who Geiger is and where he comes from. This series, Geiger, was actually released by Image Comics a few years ago, but we've rebooted the series, sort of, under the Ghost Machine imprint with Image Comics. So even though this is the #1, this is really a second start to a story that's already started a few years ago. The character's name is Tariq Geiger, and he was dying from cancer. But during the events of the unknown war, he was bombarded with a massive amount of radiation from bombing, and that somehow gave him this glowing radioactive ability, sort of like a Mr. Phosphorus type of capability. So that makes him very strong, very lethal, and he's able to burn people with radiation energy, not with beams, but by touch. And so this story takes place 25 years after the present day, after the unknown war is over, and most of America is a radioactive wasteland. And so Tariq wanders from town to town, just sort of looking to survive, looking to find a place in this world, and still mourning the loss of his wife and child. And so the context of the story is very much in the same type of style as like an Old West type of Western, where you have a lone traveler, very much like a Clint Eastwood type of character, but this takes place in a post-apocalyptic future, and instead of a gunfighter, you have a radioactive superhero. The story picks up with Geiger, or as he's known to the population as the Glowing Man, as he's just kicking back in a small town, and he was looking for a library for a book to read, just to kind of occupy his mind and occupy his time. The townspeople are then beset by a group of marauders who first and previously came to take the town's food, or at least enough food to sustain them. And now when the marauders have come back looking for more food and realizing the townspeople don't have anything to give, they decide that they're going to start taking their children to buy, sell, and barter with. When the leader of the marauders mistakenly approaches Geiger, thinking that he can push the guy around because Geiger can turn his powers on and off and he just looks like a regular dude sitting on a bench, the guy knocks the book out of Geiger's hands, a mistake that he greatly resents. And we cut back a few minutes later, after the Glowing Man, now powers activated, has basically put down every one of the marauders in horrible and horrific ways, especially one large dude who happened to make the very sad mistake of taking a small child hostage. Cut through a little bit later, we see that the Glowing Man, Geiger, is being followed by a guy dressed in what looks to be a collected or a patchwork set of medieval armor. We find out later that the man's name is Nate. Nate has been associated with other marauder gangs, but he's tired of doing the wrong thing and hurting people, and tired of being afraid, and he wants to be just like Geiger, not realizing the implications of what that means. But after a little back and forth, and Nate eventually attempting to kill himself when Geiger tells him that life isn't worth living for somebody like him and that he's just better off moving on, Nate sort of took the message the wrong way, and Geiger intervenes to stop him from killing himself, and says, "Okay, fine, you can follow along with me because you've told me about a story about another glowing person who might just be like me, but who has potentially been cured from his radioactive powers, so he can be a normal human again." As the two travel along, they are accosted by a military force sent by the president, because the president has heard rumors of the Glowing Man and wants to capture Geiger, dead or alive, to study his powers and figure out how he can use that power for his own military forces. The issue ends with a brief flashback to Geiger remembering how he used to be a happily married man with a child, and how he misses that life and the life he longs to get back to, although that's probably not possible considering his family is long dead. And then we cut to a quick scene, or an epilogue, if you will, of another man showing up in some kind of strange suit, showing up in an armored vehicle, who may have powers like Geiger, but different. His powers appear to be electricity based. And that's the long and the short of the issue. It's very much a lot about world building, character building, setup, and establishing the status quo. What do we like about Geiger #1? Well, for all those same reasons, this is why we like this issue. It does an incredibly efficient and effective job of setting up the world, establishing the characters, setting their motivations, giving Geiger a goal, an objective, and a journey, and creating an atmosphere to help you understand what kind of trials and travails and challenges Geiger will probably face along the way. He has to deal with raiders and marauders, looters, bandits. He also has to deal with a series of government groups or agencies sent by the president that want his power, or at least want to understand what kind of power they can obtain from him. And now you have the new promise of a potential adversary, somebody who is similar to Geiger but different. So a yin to his yang, or potentially a villain that he will have to fight with power against power in the future. It's a lot of setup, but it's really, really well done. It's really well established, and it pulls you into the world and pulls you into Geiger's sphere of everything that he's going to encounter. So it's really well done. Pacing's good, dialogue's good, all the action is good, and you really get drawn into the story. And it very much feels like a post-apocalyptic type of Western, which I think is what Geoff Johns was going for. What didn't we like about Geiger #1? Honestly, not much. This was a rock solid start to a new series with a new hero in a new world and a new setting. All the piece parts are there, and everything was executed beautifully. So if you're looking to kind of get into a new series and you're not quite sure if you're going to be able to pick it up right away, if you're going to get pulled into that world right away, you don't have any of that concern here. Geoff Johns nails it from start to finish on the script and the execution. So let's switch over and talk about the art from Gary Frank. This is Gary Frank we're talking about. So of course you're going to get high quality art, and this issue is no exception. The art here is beautifully rendered. It is high detail. It is exceptionally conceived and assembled and laid out and constructed and composed. It is very much a gritty, atmospheric drama from start to finish. And then when you do get the sort of superhero level power type of displays of action, it looks amazing. This is quintessential Gary Frank, and if you're a fan of his art, you're going to love this issue. Final thoughts. Geiger #1 is as rock solid a start to a new series as you could possibly ask for. The main character is interesting. His world and the surrounding characters are unique and fresh. The art looks fantastic, and this is everything you could possibly hope for in kicking off a new series to get readers invested and to get readers drawn into a new and unique story and vision for the future. Therefore, we're going to give Geiger #1 from Image Comics and the new creator-owned imprint Ghost Machine a rock-solid 9.5 out of 10 to go with the rock-solid start to a new series. If you're interested in more Ghost Machine comics, we're going to have a few more reviews coming up here pretty soon. So stay tuned through the outro for the next review.